goes down to 0, and it sets for a minute. This one's on the back side, this will go. Another thing will go down, I should say. Another thing that's on here is a pressure release valve, right here. Most of them are little plastic, hard plastic. If these are so hard that you cannot remove them, then you need a new one. So they're soft, need to be soft enough that the pressure can push them out if you have overpressurized your can. They're not going to explode. This is your thing that saves you from having your canner explode, which they did occasionally in the 1940s. They haven't since then, very seldom. But also, you need to check your sealing ring. If your canner's leaking or it won't hold the pressure, you need to check the sealing ring. And that, so, and a lot of the hardware stores do have them to if you replace a sealing ring and then you cannot get your lid on, take it out and turn it over and try again, because some of them are only one way. And most of them are shaped in kind of a V shape with the open V to the center of the canner. So, and some of them are they just won't work if you have them upside down. So, okay. And it works the same with this one. Okay. I canned meat in these this morning on a gas stove. I was up at the Upper Skagit Reservation, and they wanted me to teach them how to can fish. And this one reached temperature way faster than this one did. About 10 minutes difference in that. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you have plenty of water in here. It's recommended 2 to 3 inches for most things. Fish takes 100 minutes. So we put about an extra inch of water in here. This one does not release as much steam out as this one does, because that's the way this one controls it with the release of steam. So this one, this one did not heat up quite as fast as this one did. It took 10 minutes longer, yes, and about 5 minutes longer for it to go down so it can build in the bed. I can a lot of things. I've got chicken up here and some beef. My venison's gone. I've got some beans up here. These are Scarlet Runner beans that are wonderful, wonderful chili beans. When you eat a cup of those, you know you've had a bowl full. A lot of very, very meaty. And that, so we really like them. The beans themselves are purple and pink, and when they're canned, they turn brown. And you might only get 6 or 7 of them in a big long pod like this, but they're really, really good. And I raise them every year. And then I've also canned moose and elk over the years, and of course fish always. Fish you only can in pint jars. And it takes 100 minutes for it in pint jars. If you smoke it out of the jar and you want to can it, check your instructions, because it'll be a longer time. Because what you're doing is you're taking the air out of the meat when you're smoking it, and it's also making it more dense for the heat to penetrate, so it takes extra time to do that. I got so that I would put my fish in the jar regularly, and then drop a couple of drops of about a half a teaspoon of liquid smoke in the jar, and then you don't have to change your time, but it still tastes like smoked salmon.
Oh, it is salmon you were doing. I was going to ask if it was salmon.
Pardon?
You did salmon today?
I did salmon today. Yeah. They furnished it, I didn't, so they got to keep it all.
What is the flavor like of cans in that cans? Is it stronger or lighter?
Well, it's just like if you bought canned salmon in a can store, it's going to taste basically the same. But different fish will have a slightly different flavor. You know, king salmon's going to taste better than if you're doing a humpy or something, you know, or a silver. And I've canned tuna fish before. If you ever can tuna fish, you probably never buy another can in the grocery store, because it is so good. They're kind of expensive, but it's still good. Okay, never ever cool it down under pressure, because then you're under the water, running water, and your you're actually hurrying the process and you're under processing. And then, let's see, if you're doing something that calls for a hot pack, whether it's in the pressure canner or in the water bath canning, don't let it cool down. If it calls for a hot bath pack, it means it wants to go into the jar hot. So you put it in the jar hot, you have everything ready, get your lids on and get it into your hot canner, whether it's there or whether it's in the pressure canner, either one. If you get it cooled down, then it's going to require longer length of time to do the canning process. The other things that are on here are economic losses only, they're not hazardous. Use of mayonnaise jars. Years ago, mayonnaise jars were pretty thick. Now they're very thin. Some of them are plastic now. Yeah. And use of paraffin, we talked about that. Or cooling too slowly after you take things out of the canner. That's what I mentioned, that don't put a towel or something over your processed food while it's cooling off. You want it to cool on its own without being kept there. And then it says storing food longer than recommended. I work generally on an 18-month rotation, and once in a while I'll find something that's gone longer. My son went out the other day and was cleaning out my storage room for me, and he found a jar of peaches that had been done in 1997, and he brought them in. He says, "Mom, are these good?" And I said, "Well, we'll open them and see. They're not going to kill me. You know, they're high acid, and they tasted good." So, you know, that's not a recommendation, but if you happen to do, well, there's some things that with botulism, there's a reason for doing what we do, the reason we have to process that. Now, I want you to look in your materials for pressure canning. You're going to come to a page that has a bunch of jars on it, just like this. We can go out in the garden and pick a carrot out of the ground and wipe it off on our hands, we take our hands and soup clear it off of it and eat it. It's not going to hurt us, but we may be eating botulism spores. Washington, Alaska, Idaho, Oregon, and Wyoming have the most botulism spores in the soil. Back east, there's places that there isn't any. But in Washington and Alaska in particular, we have a lot of botulism in the soil. So as long we need to clean it really good. You don't want to over clean, but make sure that it's clean, make sure it's washed off. We put it in a jar, but if one of those little spores or two should happen to go into the jar with our product, and then we can it, we're creating a vacuum, as we say.